Good morning and welcome to Denny Real Estate. A couple weeks ago, I did a video on understanding your offer. I'll pop the link for this one in the notes, but basically I went over the three forms that you use, at least in PEI, which is your agency disclosure, your agreement of purchase and sale, and then your Schedule A, which is where all of your conditions are. So I'll pop the link for that one. It's more of a broad overview, and it'll be in the show notes. Now today, I'm looking to go over the Schedule A, and that's where all of your conditions live. So, I want to buy this house conditional of blank, conditional of us getting financing, us doing an inspection, us checking the septic system, etc. So today I'll go over that in a lot more detail. I'll go over the timelines I typically recommend, some tips and tricks, and how you can use those conditions to make sure you're buying the right house for you. First thing we have to do is find you a beautiful home. So selfishly, I've picked one of my own listings. This is 99 Long Point Road in Rustcoville, PEI. As you can see, just a gorgeous place to live. Now let's say you are at the point where you're ready to make an offer on the beautiful 99 Long Point Road. You want to make it yours. So we've already discussed price separately. Now we're talking conditions. What do you want a couple weeks to do, to look into, to do your due diligence on? First one is title search. We typically do this with any residential property sale. And what it means is we're giving our lawyers, your lawyers, time to look at the property and make sure there's no liens against the property that you would be inheriting. So, say the seller had a contractor in and they did a whole bunch of work and then the seller decided to not pay them. It happens probably more than you think. What will happen is the contractor will get a lawyer to drop a letter and put a lien against the property. And what that lien does is it says, this seller cannot sell this property before they pay me. For you, the buyer, what we don't want you to do is buy the property, not know about that lien, and then you have to pay that contractor because you now own it. So that's just one example. An even simpler example is just a mortgage. The sellers would have to pay out their mortgage before we transfer ownership into your name. How we usually do this one is we pick a date typically 1 to 2 weeks before closing. I'll bring up a calendar after to show all of the conditions, but for argument's sake, I'm going to pick January 29th, and what we're assuming is it's January 1st, and we're putting the offer in on the 1st. Down here, we have to pick how many days we want to give until the give for the seller to fix any title problem. So in that example I gave earlier, let's say we do find there's a lien against the property. We say, okay, we're going to give you 5 days to fix that. Go pay the contractor, commit to paying off your mortgage, whatever. You have 5 days, and then we'll still continue with the deal. The next one is financing. So typically, we will give in the range of 10 days to 2 weeks for financing. So since it's an offer on January 1st, we're going to pop up to the 15th and pick 2 weeks. If possible, you want to avoid a financing date on a Friday or a Monday. Those just, if anything gets delayed, can really screw the rest of the conditions up. So we're okay because we're picking 2 Wednesdays away. That's great. In that time, you're going to be going back and forth with your broker or your lender quite a bit. You're going to be providing things like T4s, pay stubs, bank account totals. Where's your down payment coming from? They'll run credit reports on you, all that kind of stuff. So usually a week and a half to 2 weeks is enough for them to do all their research and say, hey, this is a good buyer and we don't mind lending to them. Next up is home inspection. Now, what I like to do is I like to do financing 2 weeks after the accepted offer, and then I like to do the home inspection 1 to 2 days after that. So I'm going to pick the 17th. Now, the reason being, a home inspection is typically in the range of $400 to $600. So financing is free. You're going to find out in 2 weeks if you're approved or if you're not, and it's up to the bank to decide that. What we don't want to do is have you pay for your inspection, pay for it on January 14th, let's say, and then on the 15th, we find out that the bank hasn't approved you. So you've just gone and spent $500 or $600 on a home inspection, and you don't have anything to show for it because the bank said you can't buy this house. So that's why I usually put it 1 to 2 days after financing. Now, if financing gets approved in 5 days, we can certainly move the inspection up. Property insurance is for you to confirm that the property is insurable with whoever you might choose. So certain property insurers like TD, they'll just ask you a whole bunch of questions on the phone and they'll give you a yay or nay and how much it's going to be. Others in PEI anyway, like PEI Mutual, they might want to come out and do an inspection on the property. So we want to give a few extra days for that as well. Again, this doesn't cost the buyer anything. So I typically put this the same day as financing or even home inspection. Either one is fine. Let's slot in the 15th for this one. So there's two options with the septic system. Either one, you're not on a municipal, you're on a septic system with a tank, and you want to get that inspected. I will usually put this the same day as the home inspection, so the 17th. Same exact reason. You're going to pay, $300 to $400 to have this inspected as well. Make sure everything's working fine. We don't want to do that before you find out if you're approved for financing or not. In the case that you're buying a property without a septic system, so you're on a city system, we don't need this inspection, so we can just cross it out like that. Similarly with the water quality test, if you were buying a property that was on municipal water, they have their own testing requirements, so we don't need to test ourselves, so we would cross this out. Now, if you were buying a property that was on a well, we would definitely want to get that tested, make sure everything's good, there's no bacteria, and your chemicals are good. Typically, I'll put this one in the 3 to 4 weeks after an accepted offer range. So if we're on the first, we'll go 1 week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks. I'm actually going to slot it in on the Friday to give a couple of extra days. The reason being is that it will often take up to 3 weeks to get your test results back. Now, this one's very different in comparison to all the other conditions, which are typically the buyer's responsibility to fulfill. This, the water quality test report, is actually on the sellers. So they have to hire a third party, often a plumber or a water test company, to come in and do this test. And it has to be somebody who's not involved in the transaction. So it can't be the buyers, can't be the sellers, can't be the realtors, lawyers, anything like that. It's somebody who's not in it at all. So the reason I'm giving 3 weeks is I'm saying accepted offer happened on a Wednesday. Let's say Thursday or Friday, they're able to get a plumber in, and then we have 3 weeks to get our test results back. The fixture condition is we want to make sure that everything that we viewed is included. So say we viewed and then they went the next day and removed a whole bunch of stuff. Well, we assumed we were getting all that stuff. So in this case, we had an accepted offer on Wednesday. Let's say we viewed it on the Monday. We would then list everything in here that we expect to be included. So, microwave, stove, fridge, freezer, and so on. The transfer of rental or leased items, this would be things like a propane tank or a solar system. Some of the solar systems are on like a lease agreement with the company, so you can transfer that. We'd have to provide a little bit more detail in here if we were actually going to do it, but quite common what you see is people don't want, aside from solar, people don't want to connect to the new propane. They'll often use the current their current service agreement and just transfer it to a new house. So you'll often see this one crossed out. We'll cross it out for this. Last three. Sale of buyer's property. So this is not a first-time home buyer. This is somebody who has their own property that they're trying to sell, and they're submitting an offer on another property, but they need a condition to say, well, hey, we'll buy this one, but we first have to sell our other one. So how this would look is we'll just put in a random address in here. 01 Main Street, Summerside, PEI. So the buyers would have to sell their property at 01 Main Street by this date. So our accepted offer was on the 1st. Probably give them a month, maybe 6 weeks, and we jump up ahead into March and say you have to have a firm deal by this date. I'll put one in here. We'll say March 5th. And What this clause is saying is, let's say somebody else comes along and puts a second offer on the house that you're trying to buy. This clause says you have a certain amount of time to decide if you're going to try and go through with it or not. Um, and you would try and go through with it under the assumption that you're balancing two houses for a short time, or you're so sure that you're going to sell your house and you're even willing to take a deep discount in order to do so. Typically, when a second offer comes in, the person with the sale of buyer's property clause, they'll often say like, okay, we're not willing to take on the risk of having two houses or having to take a deep cut on our house, so we'll just back out and let you guys take it. But if anything falls through on your end, we're definitely there to try again. I'm more so doing this video for first time home buyers, so I'm actually going to delete this one. If you didn't already own a home, this would just get crossed out. We don't need that condition. Solicitor's approval. So when I do this one, I'll often put it around the same time as financing or inspection. Maybe we'll say the 15th. But often we don't actually need to do this one because it's our job as realtors to draft the paperwork correctly and make sure the terms suit our buyers. In the cases where we might need this is definitely if they had a sale of buyer's property, I would include it. Or if there's anything like corporations, buyers from off island coming, estates, anything like that, that just an extra couple steps that can complicate things, I would add we want the buyer's solicitor to approve and review the paperwork, say it's all good to go on their end. The last one is property disclosure statement. Property disclosure statement, PDS, is just the sellers will go through and they'll try and list any issues they know of with their house and when things were serviced, what work they've done to it. So, the boiler was serviced 2 years ago. We changed the filter this year. The dishwasher had a warranty issue, so we replaced the pump, all that kind of stuff. You'll see probably 50-50. Half of sellers don't include them and half do. So you're just acknowledging here, the buyer acknowledges either A, we did receive one and we reviewed it, or B, we did not. And lastly, this area is where you would put any other terms that you want included. So often it's left blank, but I just wrote one where it's people coming from Ontario to live in PEI, so they put in an offer, and one of their conditions is, well, we like the house, we think it's going to work, but we do want to see it in person. If it's not up to snuff, like all your photos were photoshopped and it's not nearly as good as it looks on the internet, then we can still back out if we want to. So this is where any extra conditions would go, and those are specific to each sale and each person. Okay, so I've structured this kind of as if it's a first-time home buyer. We have our accepted offer. We have our financing and insurance conditions. We have our home inspection, potentially septic inspection if it's not on a municipal system. Sometimes we have solicitor's approval. We have water quality test report if it's not on a municipal system and has its own well. And then we have title search and then the closing as well. So on paper, this is what this would actually look like. Accepted offer on the 1st of January, a couple days to submit the deposit. Usually the deposit is 0.5% to 1% of the total purchase price. This 99 Long Point selling for $729, so we'd probably want to see at least a $5,000 deposit sent within a few days. Financing condition 2 weeks later. Then we have home and septic inspections. The reason we put them after is so we don't have to pay for them if financing doesn't go through or if insurance doesn't go through, but that's not very common. We also have solicitor's approval on the 17th. Water quality test report, we have 3 weeks plus a couple days just for them to have somebody come in, take the water, and then get the results back from the lab. And then we have title search about a week after that. So title search, usually the lawyers will ask for at least a week, sometimes 2, and we want to put that at least a week before the closing date. So in this case, we would probably tell the lawyers to start their title search on the 20th. We'd say, hey, everything aside from the water quality test report is good to go, so we think you can proceed, and then we'll address any water issues afterwards. Then we slot the closing typically 1 to 2 weeks after the title search. So all in all, this is a very quick close, about a month. Often we'll have bigger gaps, especially between financing and title search. Sometimes that's a month long, sometimes six weeks long. If by chance the buyers have that sell their own property condition, then we're probably dragging this out, 8 to 12 weeks, something like that. A 5 week close is pretty quick. If we really wanted to, we might be able to slide this closing date up to the end of January. We'd have to compress these things, and you might have to do inspections at the risk of not having financing. But if you're super confident that it was going to go through, we could do that, and we could probably pull off an accepted offer and a close in under a month, but it'd definitely be tight. So that is the most common conditions in an offer, a buyer's offer in PEI real estate anyway. I know it's quite similar across Canada. Some of the timelines, tips and tricks as well, why we do things and why your realtor might just slot in some dates without even asking you. I often do that as a realtor. I'll just try and make the offer as competitive as possible. And, we really want to get it accepted. So I want to meet the timelines of the seller, but also make it realistic that the buyers can accomplish it and, you know, hopefully not have to fork out any money until they know for sure it's good to go. Thanks for listening. I hope this was of value to you, and feel free to share it with others if it was.